We're always looking for those spots that are more than just, well, a nice view.
Hmm.
Places where you can really feel the history, but still, get outside and enjoy nature.
Exactly. And that's what really pulled us towards Fort Ridgeley State Park over in southwestern Minnesota.
It sounds fascinating.
It really is. We've gathered info from the Minnesota Historical Society, the DNR, naturally, some background facts from Wikipedia, and even dipped into a local newspaper. So, trying to get a full picture.
Okay, so the plan for this deep dive is pretty straightforward then.
Yeah, basically just give you a good, engaging overview of Fort Ridgeley.
So if you're thinking of heading out there, or maybe you're just curious, we want to hit the highlights, the history, what makes it stand out, those little details.
Right, what makes the place tick?
So history seems like the big thing here. Where do we start?
Well, the beginning is probably 1853. That's when Fort Ridgeley was established as a U.S. military outpost.
Okay, 1853.
And its location wasn't random. It was put near the reservation lands of the Eastern Dakota people.
Right, because there was that huge land cession just before that, wasn't there?
Exactly. In 1851, the Eastern Dakota, or Eastern Sioux as they're also known, were under immense pressure and ended up ceding something like 35 million acres.
35 million acres. That's
Yeah.
hard to even picture.
It's vast. So they were moved onto this smaller reservation along the Minnesota River.
And the fort goes up nearby. So it's essentially there as a federal presence while settlers start moving onto those lands.
That was the idea, to maintain order, keep the peace as settlers arrived.
Though I imagine order and peace felt pretty different depending on your perspective.
That's a really important point. Officially it was about peace, but putting a military fort right next to the reservation, that definitely shifted the power dynamic, created tension. And by 1862, you had this perfect storm brewing, broken promises from treaties, shady dealings by fur traders, crop failures hitting hard.
It just all boiled over.
It did, culminating in the US-Dakota War.
Yeah.
And Fort Ridgeley suddenly becomes this central point.
Right, the flashpoint. And this is where it gets really dramatic with the attacks on the fort itself.
Yes, August 1862. It was attacked twice, August 20th, and then again on the 22nd.
And it wasn't originally built as some massive fortress, was it? More like a basic post.
That's right. It was more of a training base initially, which makes it even more remarkable that it held out.
Yeah, you mentioned it was one of the few forts west of the Mississippi to actually withstand a direct assault like that.
It really was. Speaks volumes about the defenders. There were about 280 people inside, soldiers and civilians mixed together.
280 total, and the initial military force was quite small.
Very small. In early August 62, it was just Company B of the 5th Minnesota Infantry, 76 men, 2 officers, under Captain John Marsh.
Oh,
But things escalated incredibly fast. There were attacks on the Lower Sioux Agency, and then that horrible ambush at Redwood Ferry.
where Captain Marsh was killed, right, while trying to respond to the agency attack.
Exactly. He and about half his men were caught in that ambush during the retreat across the ferry. A terrible loss.
So by the time the fort itself is attacked, the defenders are even fewer and under Lieutenant Sheehan's command.
Correct. And they were significantly outnumbered by the Dakota forces. Some accounts put the numbers in the hundreds for the first attack, maybe even 1,000 for the second.
Wow. How did they manage to hold on?
Well, artillery played a huge part.
Yeah.
Lieutenant Gear used a howitzer really effectively.
A howitzer. That's the one that fires shells in a high arc. Good for hitting enemies behind cover.
Precisely. And Sergeant Gels was apparently very skilled with the 6-pound field gun, which is more direct fire. Those cannons were crucial.
But it wasn't just the soldiers, you said. Civilians pitched in too.
Absolutely. We found this story about a Mrs. Mueller. Apparently, when they were running low on ammunition for the cannons,
Yeah?
she directed people to cut up iron bars in the blacksmith shop to use as makeshift cannon shop.
No way. Just pure ingenuity under fire. That's incredible.
Isn't? It really shows how everyone pulled together.
So they hold out until reinforcements arrive.
Yes. On August 27th, Colonel Henry Sibley showed up with about 1,400 men from Fort Snelling. That prompted the Dakota forces to withdraw.
A really pivotal, intense chapter in the fort's history. What happened to it after the war? Did it remain an active post for long?
Surprisingly, no. The Army actually left Fort Ridgeley pretty soon after, in 1867.
Just 5 years later, huh?
Yeah. And then civilians started moving into the buildings, and eventually a lot of the structures were taken apart, materials reused elsewhere.
Oh, so it could have just faded away.
It could have. But thankfully, its historical significance wasn't totally forgotten. In the 1930s, the Veteran Conservation Corps, the VCC, did a lot of work there.
Like the CCC, the Civilian Conservation Corps.
Similar idea, yeah. They did major excavations, uncovered building foundations.
Ah, so mapping out the original layout.
Exactly. And they fully reconstructed the commissary building. That's the stone building you can still see today.
That's fantastic. A tangible piece of the past brought back.
Definitely. And then later, it got formal recognition placed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1970, and the designation was expanded in '89.
And the Minnesota Historical Society manages it now.
Since 1986, yes. They've been the stewards, handling preservation and interpretation.
Okay, now there's a recent update people planning a visit should know about, right? Something about the museum.
Yes, important point. According to a local news source from just this April 2025, the actual Fort Ridgeley Museum and Interpretive Center building has permanently closed.
Permanently closed. Okay, so no indoor exhibits anymore.
That seems to be the case. The park grounds are still open, the historic site itself, but not the specific museum building.
Good to know. But there's still plenty to see outdoors, connecting with the history.
Oh, absolutely. You'll find the big memorial to the US-Dakota War. That went up back in 1911.
And you mentioned the reconstructed commissary. What else is visible?
You can see the foundations outlining where other buildings stood. The main monument, of course, and those impressive stone structures the CCC and VCC built in the 30s.
Like picnic shelters and things?
Exactly. And the Historical Society has put up interpretive signs around the site, so you can do a self-guided tour and still learn a lot as you walk around.
That's great. So the history is still very present on the landscape.
Very much so. And then beyond the fort area itself, the state park has all these natural features too. Lots of hiking.
Okay, let's talk trails. What are the options?
Well, there's the Upper Prairie Trail. It's about a 2.5-mile loop, mostly flat, mowed grass.
Sounds nice and easy.
Yeah, and it goes around the battlefield area and along the river bluff. Imagine walking that, thinking about the history with those views.
Definitely adds another layer. What else?
There's the Riverview Trail. That's shorter, maybe a mile one way, but more rolling hills, packed dirt. It leads to a really nice scenic overlook of the valley.
Okay.
Then the Fort Road Trail, well, 1.25 miles one way, also rolling hills. It follows the old road towards St. Peter.
Oh, cool. Like a historic path itself.
Kind of, yeah. And the Hilltop Trail is a 1.5-mile loop. Goes through woodlands, supposed to have nice wildflowers, and leads to another overlook on Airplane Hill.
Airplane Hill?
Yeah, the DNR maps show all these clearly.
Good tip about the maps. And you mentioned some can get slippery.
Yeah, the DNR warns that the steeper parts can be slick after rain, so good shoes are probably smart.
Always good advice for hiking. What about other activities besides hiking?
Well, if you like horseback riding, there are miles of horse trails in the park.
Oh, nice.
Just need to be careful at water crossings, make sure they're safe to cross. And riders 16 and over need a horse pass from the park office.
Got it. Camping?
Yep, several options. There's a horse camp, a group camp, and regular drive-in and walk-in sites too.
And didn't you mention a farmhouse rental?
I did. They've renovated a farmhouse within the park that you can actually rent for overnight stays. How cool is that?
That sounds amazing. A really unique way to experience the park.
Right. Plus, they're nice picnic spots, and you can even rent that historic stone picnic shelter the CCC built for bigger groups.
Wow. And winter activities, too.
Yeah, they have sliding hills for winter fun. And the DNR site hints at possible summer interpretive programs, so it's worth checking their website closer to when you might visit.
Okay, lots to do. What about wildlife, bird watching?
Oh, definitely. Fort Ridgeley is apparently a great spot for birding. It sits on these high bluffs over the Minnesota River Valley.
Which is a natural flyway for migration, right?
Exactly. So you get a huge variety of birds attracted to the different habitats, the woods, the restored prairie, the open fields.
Any specifics stand out?
The DNR checklist is pretty impressive. They've recorded over 24 species of warblers alone.
24 warblers. Wow.
Yeah, plus lots of vireos, flycatchers, thrushes, sparrows. And for grassland birds, you might spot things like bobolinks or grasshopper sparrows.
So bring your binoculars.
Definitely. The checklist on the DNR website even tells you the best seasons to see specific birds.
Good resource. And fall must be pretty spectacular there, too.
Oh, yeah. The DNR fall color reports mention the prairies lighting up with native grasses and late wildflowers, asters, goldenrod, sunflowers, big blue stem.
Beautiful textures and colors.
And then you combine that with the big views of the river valley from the overlooks, plus the maple trees turning bright yellows and oranges. It sounds stunning.
It really does. Now, accessibility is always an important consideration. How is Fort Ridgeley for visitors with mobility challenges?
That's something the Minnesota Historical Society addresses. They acknowledge that because it's a historic site with natural terrain, there can be challenges.
Okay. What specifics do they mention?
Well, their website notes there's only one designated disability parking spot. And the main lot is thick gravel, which isn't ideal for wheelchairs.
Gravel can be tough.
And the pathways around the site are also soft gravel. They do say there's seating available along the paths, which is good.
So maybe not fully accessible everywhere, but some accommodations. Do they suggest contacting them?
Yes, they strongly encourage anyone with specific access needs to call or email them ahead of time.
Okay, good to know. Do we have that contact info?
Yep, the phone number is 537-628-5591. And the email is ftridgeley@mnhs.org. They say they'll make reasonable efforts to accommodate needs if they have advance notice.
Excellent. So planning ahead is key there.
Definitely. And one last thing, if you're making the trip out to Fort Ridgeley, remember it's just one of several historic sites in that area.
Oh, right. So you could make a whole history tour out of it.
You could. The DNR map points this out and suggests checking the MNHS website, mnhs.org, for more info on nearby places.
And is there anywhere nearby that has specific exhibits about Fort Ridgeley, especially now that the on-site museum is closed?
Yes. The Nicollet County Historical Society over in St. Peter, their Treaty Site History Center apparently has an exhibit specifically about Fort Ridgeley.
Oh, perfect. So you can still get some of that museum context nearby.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Their address is 1851 North Minnesota Avenue in St. Peter. And they mentioned having free paved parking, accessible spots near the entrance, and it's a single-floor building with accessible restrooms.
Great alternative resource then.
Definitely worth checking out if you're in the area.
So wrapping things up, Fort Ridgeley State Park sounds like it really packs a punch. You've got this incredibly significant, kind of heavy history.
A really pivotal place.
Combined with this beautiful natural setting along the river valley, hiking, birding, history.
It's a compelling mix, isn't it? You can literally walk through history, engage with the past, but also just enjoy being outdoors in a really scenic part of Minnesota.
It definitely sounds like a worthwhile trip for anyone looking to explore, learn something, and connect with both history and nature.
Whether it's the battlefield stories, the river views, the fall colors, or spotting those warblers, there seems to be something there for a lot of different interests.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? How one piece of land can hold so much conflict, change, resilience, and now this natural beauty and quiet.
It does. It's a reminder of the layers in our landscapes, how the past is still present, inviting us to look a little closer and maybe understand things a bit differently.